Good day everyone, especially to you Ma'am Perin, good day. So we are the group 3 from section A and we're here to discuss the descriptive research. And this presentation also includes the description or definition given by the different authors, its characteristics, advantages, disadvantages, the descriptive research methods including surveys, case study, etc., and the content analysis. So without further ado, let's begin. So Manuel and Medel define descriptive research thus, it involves the description or describing a certain phenomena that are being studied, recording, analysis, and interpretation of the data or the present nature, composition, or process of phenomena. The focus is on prevailing conditions or how a person or group or things behaves or function in the present. So descriptive research helps in determining how a person or a group behaves in the present. So it also often involves some type of comparison or contrast. So according to Aquino, descriptive research is fact-finding with adequate interpretation. The descriptive method is something more and beyond just data gathering. The latter is not reflective thinking nor research. The true meaning of the data collected should be reported from the point of view of the objectives, meaning there is no bias happened in this kind of research and the basic assumption of the project underway. This follows logically after careful classification of data. So facts obtained may be accurate expression of central tendency or deviation or of correlation, but the report is not research unless discussion of those data is not carried up to the level of adequate interpretation. So para matawag siya og research, kailangan siya kailangan siya og thorough discussion of those data and to the level of adequate interpretation. So data must be subjective to the thinking process in terms of ordered reasoning. So descriptive research is defined by best in the following way. First, descriptive research describes and interprets what is. It is concerned with conditions of relationship that exist, practices that prevail, beliefs, processes that are going on, effects that are being felt, or trends that are developing. The process of descriptive research goes beyond mere gathering and tabulation of data, as what Aquino said. It also involves the elements or interpretation of the meaning or significance of what is described. So thus, description is often combined with comparison and contrast, involving measurement, classification, interpretation, and evaluation. So in other words, descriptive research may be defined as a purposive process of gathering, analyzing, classifying, and tabulating data about prevailing conditions, practices, beliefs, processes, trends, and cause and effects, relationship, then making adequate and accurate interpretation about such data with or without the aid of statistical methods. So, the characteristics of descriptive research. First, descriptive research ascertain prevailing conditions of fact in a group or case under study. So, the first characteristic says that it should be the facts should be prevail about the case nga imong gistudihan. Second, it gives either a qualitative or quantitative or both description of the general characteristics of the group or case under study. So descriptive research can either be a qualitative, meaning it is more an explanatory rather than exploratory or experimental. And quantitative, it is using a statistical and numerical analysis methods. It involves numbers, or it can be both. Third, what caused the prevailing condition is not emphasized. Fourth, Study of condition at different periods of time may be made, and the change or progress that took place between the periods may be noted or evaluated for any value it gives. So the fifth, comparison of the characteristics of two groups or cases may be made to determine their similarities and differences. And six, the variables or conditions studied in descriptive research and not usually controlled. So, random variables are used in descriptive research. Therefore, it is not in the hands of researchers to control the variables of descriptive research. In descriptive research, the natural behavior of participants is observed to learn about them. 7. Descriptive studies, except in case studies, are generally cross-sectional. That is, it studies the different sections belonging to the same group. So, descriptive research is generally a cross-sectional study, meaning where different sections belonging to the same group are studied. So, all the sections are studied. The last one, or the 8th, studies on prevailing conditions may or can be repeated for purposes of verification and comparison. So meaning, the results of descriptive research can be further analyzed and used in other research methods. It can also inform the next line of research, including the research method that should be used. So, value, importance, and advantages of descriptive research. Descriptive research contributes much to the formulation of principles and generalizations in behavioral sciences. This is especially true in causal comparative and correlation studies. When several inquiries register the same findings on a certain subject, then a principle or generalization may be formed about the subject. Second, descriptive research contributes much to the establishment of standard norms of conduct, behavior, or performance. So, descriptive research really help in founding a norms to be followed, or norms of conduct or behaviors or performances of a certain participant. This is especially true in psychological testing, as for instance, norms in an intelligence test. Normative standards are based on what are prevalent. Third, descriptive research reveals problems or abnormal conditions so that remedial measures may be instituted. It reveals to us what we do not want, what we want, and how to acquire what we want. So, descriptive research reveals problems or unknown or abnormal conditions para pangitaan o remedial measures sa mga researcher. So, the fourth is the descriptive research makes possible the prediction of the future on the basis of findings on prevailing conditions, correlations, and on the basis of reactions of people towards certain issue. So, kani is known ni siya sa mga candidates, sa mga political candidates. For instance, the winning candidate in an election may be predicted on the basis of survey. So, survey na is done para ma-determine kung a certain candidate for a certain position is madaog ba siya or not. So the fifth one is descriptive research gives a better and deeper understanding of a phenomenon on the basis of an in-depth study of the phenomenon. So kani siya is present ni siya or relevance ni siya in a case study. A case study is a study of one person who has a great depth. A person who has unusual circumstances and behaviors which allow you to explore the key characteristics, meanings, and implication of the case. 6. Descriptive research provide a basis for decision making. So business managers often base their decision upon business researchers. So mga business researchers will conduct a certain research to know kung kana nga business is mupatok or not. And government policymakers usually rely upon descriptive investigation for making the needed policies. In education, the curriculum has been constructed based upon descriptive research in child and adolescent psychology. And the last one, descriptive research helps fashion many of the tools with which we do research, such as instruments for the measurement of many things, instruments that are employed in all types of quantitative research. So these instruments include schedules, checklists, scorecards, and rating scales. Descriptive studies contribute to the development of these data gathering devices in two ways. First, through creating a demand for them, and second, through providing the normative, which is those norms, standardizing procedures by which the scales are evaluated and calibrated.
My name is Carlin B. Castro, and to the continuation of the report of Mr. Brisano, I am going to talk about techniques under the descriptive method of research. So there are three techniques under descriptive method of research. First is the survey, second is the case study, and third is the content analysis. Let me define first what is survey. Survey is otherwise known as normative survey. It's a fact-finding study with adequate and accurate interpretation. The survey is not that dili nga na kasayon. Case study is a comprehensive, complete, detailed, and in-depth study and analysis of an individual, institution, group, or community. So, case study is very clear nga gi-state ana na it is very complete and comprehensive, detailed, not just as kanang kung unsa rin mo mapunit nga words like that. And content analysis is a research tool used to determine the presence of certain words, themes, or concepts within some given qualitative data. As an example, researchers can evaluate language used within a news article to search for bias or partiality. To analyze the text using context analysis, the text must be coded or broken down into manageable code categories for analysis. So I have researched in the internet and what is content analysis. And according from Holsti, correct me if I'm wrong, from Holsti 1968, any technique for making inferences by systematically and objectively identifying special characteristics of messages. So it is very clear nga it is it follows it has system to follow and objectives also. And let's go to the difference between survey and case study. So let us first read the survey. Survey is a group surveyed is usually large. Yes, kanang naka-experience man ta when we are in our senior high school, we are conducting survey in our research. While the case study may involve and usually involves one person, family, small group, or small community, and mura siya kanang naa siya privacy, dili it has only in a small group or small community. Survey is it has the number of aspects or variables in life of the group surveyed is limited, while the case study usually all aspects or variables in the life cycle of the case under study are included. Survey cause effect relationships are not given emphasis. Aim of a study may only be to determine status. ang cause-effect ra nga relationship sa survey is unsa ang status, ma-determine na nato kung unsa ang status. While the case study, finding the cause of certain phenomena is always a part of a case study. Kanang iya yung gipangita unsay cause ani nga phenomena, no? Kay it is a case, kanang word pa lang daan niya. And survey representativeness is important and is given emphasis. Gitaghaan siya ng emphasis, while the case study representativeness is not important. The results of a single case study do not provide certainty that the case is truly representative. Survey curiosity, interest, or just to determine norm or status may initiate a survey. So, kung naa kay curiosity or naa kay interest to conduct the study, yes, you can have your survey. While the case study, abnormalities or undesirable traits or conditions usually initiate a case study. A case study is very serious type of method. Survey only conditions or practices present during the survey are considered except in comparative studies when present conditions are compared with conditions in the past. While the case study data about the case from birth or origin or even of the future are considered. Giconsider the jud niya kung unsa ang future ani niya. And next, I will be talking about the advantages of the survey approach over the case study approach. There are certain advantages of the survey approach of research over the case study approach, among which are the following. First, survey reveals what is typical, average, or normal against which the behavior or performance of an individual can be judged or evaluated. So, that is one of the advantages no yeah not a survey approach of our research over the case study. And second, the results of a survey may be used for prediction. Yes, it is very clear nga pwede ang results sa survey kay pwede na to siya gamiton sa ato ang prediction. Survey makes possible the formulation of generalizations because the sample has a high degree of representativeness. Survey reveals problems for which timely remedial measures may be instituted. And it is easy to get respondents for a survey. No, you can choose random or whatever you can. The instruments for gathering data are easy to determine, construct, validate, and administer because you have the freedom or naani mo ang pagbuot nga kinsa imuhang mga instruments sa imong study. Next is the advantages of the survey approach or technique. Now, when we have the advantages, yes, we have these disadvantages. First, lack of manipulation over independent variables. Second, one cannot progressively investigate one aspect after another of the independent variable to get closer to the real cause. And statistical devices are not always able to separate the effects of several independent variables when there is multivariable causation, especially when two independent variables are themselves highly associated. Naadyo'y duha ka variables nga pwede ma-occur sa usa ka research. Then survey approach yields a low degree of control or there is no control at all over extraneous variables. And the instrument for gathering data may lack validity, reliability, or advocacy.
Hello everyone, my name is Pamela Mancho. For my report is the types of survey technique or approach. So these are the 16 types of survey from which the researcher may select one depending upon the situation, his interest and goal. professional competence to tackle the work and financial capability. So the first survey is the total population survey. In this survey, it is the entire population is involved that survey. So, lahat ng kabuoang populasyon ang magsasagot sa survey. And for the second survey is the sample survey. Only one example of a population is involved in that survey. So, sabotable naman kayo, diba na sample survey. So, kailangan isa na dyan ang sample, dili na duha. And then, for the third survey is that social survey. The investigator researches on attitudes and behavior of different groups of people. So, ano siya? Social survey. So, mag-observe ang investigator sa mga attitudes and behavior sa isa ka populasyon. So, isa ra ang mag-observe, investigator ra. And then, for the fourth survey is the school survey. This is to gather the data about schools and assess educational achievements and educational itself. So ani nga survey sa school rin siya mahimo. For the fifth survey is the public opinion survey. This is used to gauge the reaction of people towards certain issues or persons. For example, people may be asked in a survey on how much they agree with the way of the president is running the government. So ani nga survey is ang public opinion is ang tali. So, mag-survey sila kung unsay mga comments about ana nga komunidad. And then, for the sixth survey is the poll survey. This is a survey in which the respondents are asked if they are voting for a certain candidate on an election. So, for the poll survey, this is the reaction of people towards the issues, certain issues of a person. So, example, one person is asked if who is the winning president of that. For the seventh survey, it is the market survey. This aimed in finding out what kinds of people purchase which products and how packaging, advertising, and displaying affect buying prices and so on. So for this survey, it will happen on the market. The researcher survey the prices, the products, and others happening in the market. For the eighth survey, it is the evaluation survey. And then the researcher looks back to see what was been accomplished with a critical eye and evaluates the results whether the satisfactory or not with an end of view of making improvements. For the ninth survey, it is the comparative survey. In this survey, the results from two different groups, techniques, and procedures are compared. So, example, Ana, is that the comparison of the effectiveness of the procedure of an old or with a standard or two new procedures to be compared. For the 10th survey, it is the short-term survey. In this survey, the data are collected over the period of weeks or months or even years, but the period should be less than 5 years. So, short-term survey is that it should be less than 5 years sa siya. Di siya mo higit pa. And then, for the 11th survey, it is the long-term survey. Any survey conducted for more than 5 years is a long-term survey. The best example is that it is the Exceptional Children by Thurman, made by Thurman. It is lasted almost 30 years. For the 12th survey, it is the longitudinal survey. This is almost the same as the long-term survey. The example for this is the practice of economists to use the time series analysis in which they compare data collected at the present with the data they were collected sometime in the past. The researcher may carry out such studies by asking their subjects questions about the past event and compare with the responses to the present affairs of things. Dito sa survey na ito, ang mga nakaraang survey ay inuungkat para ikumpara sa ngayon na nga survey responses nila. And then for the 13th survey, this is the cross-sectional survey. In this type of survey, several groups of various stages of involvement are studied simultaneously. So, in studying the effects of smoking for a period of 20 years, if we use the longitudinal survey, we start with the subjects who have been started smoking and study them for 20 years before the results could be dominated. In a cross-sectional survey, we do not wait for the end of 20 years. We simply pick out people who had been smoking for the last 20 years and another group who had been not smoke at all, and subject both groups to rigid physical diagnosis to find out physical conditions of the smokers and the non-smokers. So, for this survey, cross-sectional survey is that we don't have to wait 20 years to have a result in that survey, because for the cross-sectional survey, in this survey, groups of different cultural backgrounds may be studied. For instance, a Christian community and a Muslim community may be studied to find out if they will have similarities and differences. A Filipino farming village and a Japanese farming village. A Filipino marketplace and an Indonesian marketplace, and the like. So, for the 14th survey, it is the job analysis survey. This provides information of the general duties and responsibilities of workers, their education, training, experiences, salaries, types of knowledge and skills, and the other helps of administrators or managers in setting up the training programs and recruitment policies. So, it is the, in this survey, job analysis is that in doing a job, we must provide accurately the information, their training, the experiences of that person, their skills and knowledge also. And then for the 15th survey, it is the community survey. So for this survey, they provide information on the various aspects of the community: the health, the employment, the housing, education, economic resources, the delinquency, the family population, and other social problems, and so forth. So, doing this survey, it is cited in a community that for the correlation study, in this study, it shows the relationship between two or more variables, that is how variable varies with another. For example, if one test have a correlation, one who gets high in that one test will also get a high score in the other. So, that would be all for my report about the types of survey technique and approach of descriptive method. That would be all. Thank you.
My name is Blesses Vileta, and I am tasked to report about case study and case work. So case study involves a comprehensive and extensive examination of a particular individual, group, or situation over a period of time. So case study needs an understanding and a long period of time. So Young defines case study as a comprehensive study of a social unit, be that unit a person, a social institution, a group, a district, or community. So, Good and Skates define case study as that method which takes a process, which takes an account of all pertinent aspect of one thing or situation, employing as a unit for study an individual, a situation, a community, or any group considered a unit. So, Good and Skates defines the method, while Mackey and Robinson 1975 and Young 1966 defines a case study in a comprehensive and extensive process or examination. So, case study may also define then as an extensive and intensive investigation of a unit represented, whether the unit is an individual, a family, a social group, an institution, or a community. The aim of which is to identify causal factors with each, what the causes of that factors, or to some abnormalities or deficiency, and to find or recommend a solution and a treatment for developmental procedures in a case study. So I'll go back. Next is casework. Casework, on the other hand, refers to especially developmental, adjustmental, remedial, or corrective procedures that appropriately follow diagnosis of causes of maladjustment or of favorable development. So, case method. Next is case method. Case method has been employed to describe a plan of organizing and presenting structural materials in law, medicine, social work, and even in education, psychology, and sociology, where as a rule, the cause materials used are the product of case study investigation. So, next is case history. So, case history is a biography obtained by an interview and other means, sometimes called collective, over the years to enable us to understand the problems of an individual and suggest ways for solving them. For Wolfman, case history is the complete medical, psychological, and social history of a patient. So, next is clinical method. Clinical method is defined by Peter as a process by which we collect all available evidence, social, psychological, educational, biographical, and medical, that promises to help and understand an individual child. So, who should be studied? Sometimes children with some abnormalities or deficiencies are the subject of case studies. These are children with exceptional abilities, very high in IQ, and or children with problems or deficiencies. Then, for example, grade 6 students have high IQ while the other cannot fully understand that low IQ rather. Social groups, each taken as a unit showing some kind of abnormalities or maladjustments, may be the subject of a case study. Then, there are different kinds of information needed in case study. Number one is identifying data, identification and statement of the problem, health and developmental history, family history, educational history, social history, economics history, and psychological history. Now, what is identifying data? Identifying data includes the name, sex, date of birth, age, place of birth, telephone number, or if any, or personal that is needed for a case study. Personal. Identification and statement of the problem are any symptoms of complaints about health, schoolwork, family relationships, abnormal behavior, work, or delinquencies. Then, number 3 is health and developmental history. Details includes details of birth, whether normal or cesarean, attended by a doctor, nurse, midwife, in a hospital or at home, or by a helot. Family history. Number 4. Abnormalities among ancestors, parents, and siblings. Health history of a family. Yes, health history. Transmitted in disease of some kind of sickness or physical proficiency. These are includes the history of the individual in their selves. Then number 5 is educational history. Cannot includes This includes an individual that cannot read, cannot do simple mathematical computations, low in grades, no interest in school works, and others. Social history. Church membership, attendance, and involvement, place normal with others on his own age. It includes the organizational socialization of an individual. Next is economic history. Economic history includes economic status, whether low, average, or high, kind of job, and size of income. Cannot stay long in a job works. Next is psychological history. Psychological history is a personality traits such as menu abilities, special talents, interests, skills, moods, or emotional patterns, desires, and needs. Next is data gathering. So, Ruby Marapolo will report about data gathering.
Hello, my name is Ruby Marapolo and I'm tasked to report about data gathering instruments. If you say data gathering instruments, it is used to a case study. So we have interview. Interview is very important. All persons who may be able to shed light on the problem are interviewed. So kung mag-conduct ta og study, mo interview man gyud ta. Then, we have important tool is observation. This involves observing the patient's behavior for an adequate length of time. So, ug mo conduct og study, mo gamit ay mo observe man gyud ta sa atong gikandakan or the patient's behavior. So, we have another instrument, the questionnaire. This is given to the patient himself and to some people who may be able to contribute something. So, questionnaire ato mo gyud kanunay gamiton para sila na mo answer sa mga pangutana sa sulod sa questionnaire. And another psychological tests are also administered to the patient for information about his problem. Mental ability tests and other psychological tests, especially the projective tests like the thematic perception. And also we have anecdotal records are also useful. These are records of significant aspects of the patient's behavior when he finds himself in different situations and his unguarded moments. And another data gathering instruments is autobiographies. Autobiographies is rich sources of information about the patient and his problem. When the patient writes the story of his life, he usually includes those incidents that have great impact or consequence upon his life, and this may be revealed at once the cause of the problem. Other devices employed are the checklists, scorecards, and rating scales. Letters and notes to and from the patient and his diaries may also help in diagnosing a case. Needless to say, all pieces of information are carefully and accurately recorded. Statistical procedures are then applied to analyze and organize or summarize the data in which case frequencies, types, trends, uniformities, or patterns of behavior are revealed. So we have characteristics of a satisfactory case study. So we have 5 characteristics. First, continuity, completeness of data, validity of data, confidential recording, and scientific synthesis. So first, we have continuity. There is a desirable continuity of information as for instance that provide by 2 successive psychological examination at an interval of a year and by an elementary school record in relation to performance in high school. Second characteristic is completeness of data. The potential range of information include symptoms, examinations, results, health, educational, and mental, and history. So, if you say completeness of data, importante gyud nga kumpleto atong data o mag conduct og study kay dili dili man makapadayon ta, dili ta makakuha sa result kung dili kompleto ang atong data. Number 3, validity of data. For instance, a doubtful birth should be verified through the birth registry and employment record by reference to employers. Dili dawaton kung dili pod valid ang imong data kung nakay research or study. 4, confidential recording. Educational workers have something to learn from medicine with respect to the confidential nature of professional records, the difficulties of individual teachers or pupils in relation to discipline, failure, achievement, or mentality should be regarded as professional problems to be treated in a confidential manner. Number 5, scientific synthesis. This is an interpretation of the evidence that is more than a mere enumeration of data secured. Lastly, we have social skills of casework. We have parts of social skills of casework. First, social insight. A complex concept of great importance in meeting administrative, supervisory, teaching, and organizational problems in welfare agencies and social services. Empathy, social understanding as how other people feel. So kani empathy is kana makasabot ka sa uban nga tao, sa ilahang mga nabati. And we have sociality, from the word social is we have to interact others or interact a positive behavior. And communication, the process by which we transmit experience or share a common experience. So by the use of communication, magamit nato pinaagi sa mag-share ta sa atong isika mga problema. Cooperation, acting or working jointly with others. So mo cooperate ta, mo na siya from the word cooperate. And we have participation, marag parehara ni sila sa cooperation. Participation, social interaction within a group directed to some end or sharing a common experience. So, kining participation of cooperation, they are related. And we have organization or a group, the process of systematically uniting in a group the persons who participate and cooperate. So, kining organization, ani magtapok nga magka-cooperate or mo participate ta sa atong activities or atong study. We have social counseling, assisting the client to formulate and analyze his problem, explore resources, or determine a course of action and secure needed services. So kaning social counseling is mo nga makatabang sa pag-analyze sa problema sa patient. And lastly, we have guidance for creative achievement. So, to liberate the powers of individuals for their own happiness and for contributions of social value. Thank you.
Good day everyone, I am Christine G. Basilad and I will be reporting this cycle of case study and casework. So case study and casework are complementary, meaning they go together or they usually help each other. So there are complementary steps in the cycle of case study. So the first is recognition and determination of the status of the phenomenon. In the first step, this is where we recognize or determine the problem. So for example, we can determine that a person has reading disability. So the second is collection of data relating to the factors or circumstances associated with a given phenomenon. So in the second step, this is where we collect data. So those data which relates to the factors or circumstances that is associated to the problem. So for example, katong problem nato nga reading disability. So what are the factors nga associated ato? So it could be physical factor or a person has blurry vision mo nang maglisod siya basa. So it could also be pedagogical or the teaching strategy of the teacher is not suitable to the child. It could also be emotional, environmental. So daghang factors. So the third is diagnosis or identification of causal factors as a basis for remedial or developmental treatment. So in the third step, this is where we diagnose na. So since we know different factors, this is where we can diagnose which among those factors is the true cause of the problem. So for example, katong reading disability, Ang true cause ato niya is ang physical factor, or the person is having reading disability because of his or her poor vision. So in the fourth step, application of remedial or adjustment measure. We can apply remedies or adjustment measures para mahatagan og solution katong iyahang problem. So we can give correct fitted eyeglasses. By giving him or her correct fitted eyeglass, then we can remove the cause of poor performance in reading. So in the fifth step, this is subsequent follow-ups to determine the effectiveness of the corrective or developmental measures applied. So we do follow-ups to know if ito atong gihatag nga remedies or adjustment measures is effective ba to cure the problem. So our next topic is content analysis. Content analysis as a research technique deals with documentary materials that are already existing and available. So just like historical documentary, books, journals, articles. So content analysis as a research techniques for the objective, systematic, and quantitative description of the manifest content of communication. From the word itself, content analysis, so it analyzes the content. Content analysis helps to analyze the actual content and its features. It also tries to present the content in objective and quantitative manner. So, why do we conduct content analysis? So, it could be to support some argument, or to identify the important aspect of the content, or to reduce large amounts of unstructured content. So, we have different characteristics of content analysis. First is it must be objective. Just like any other research techniques, content analysis must also be objective. So there should be no bias involved in selection and classification of the content to be analyzed. And to be objective as much as possible, all items must be included. The aspects in the content must be analyzed and must be placed in appropriate categories, because in content analysis, mag-categorize man ta sa iyang content. So either it be by phrase or by word. So ato ang pag-categorize is dapat sakto po siya. And also, katutanan items must be included. Otherwise, siya tendency nga certain conditions may affect the true findings of the investigation. Also, pag mag-interpret ta og data, the researchers must not be influenced by the factors. So the second characteristics is systematic. So from the word itself, systematic, it follows steps or scientific methods. Just like in conducting kanang researchers, we first recognize or determine the problem, then we form hypothesis, then we do library work and develop instrument, collect data, analyze data, making conclusions and recommendations. So the third is, it is quantitative. So content analysis of documentary materials is quantitative because interpretations and conclusions from the findings have to depend almost entirely on the frequency counts of items or aspects studied. So it is also quantitative because in conducting content analysis, usually we do kanang magtali ta sa iyang frequency. So usually it is quantitative. So there is also steps in content analysis. So the first step in content analysis first is recognizing the problem. So para sa akong example earlier, ang katayang reading disability, gi-recognize nato first kung unsa ang problem. So another example is that the commission of errors of students in composition writing in the first year high school. So mao na ang atong problem. So the second is forming the hypothesis. So usually sa mga non-experimental research, the hypothesis is written in question form. So for example, sa ato ang example nga problem in the first step, our hypothesis could be, what are the most common errors committed by the first year high school students in composition writing? What might be the possible causes of the commission of such errors? What measures must be adopted to minimize the commission of such errors? So, moto siya ato ang sample hypothesis. So, in a question form. So, third is doing library research. So, there are a lot of purpose why we do library research in content analysis. So, first purpose is if other studies of the same nature have already been conducted before. So, the procedures used may as well be guides for the researcher in conducting his research. So, if ang research is nakonduct na siya before, dili siya similar but in the same nature, then those research, we can use it para mahimong guide nato ilang procedures in making our own research. The second purpose is to find out if ang result ba sa ilahang research is same ba sa results sa ato ang research. If so, then we will be able to generalize the result of our research in a wider basis. So the third purpose of doing library search is to avoid duplication of other studies. So of course, if the study has already been made in the same place using the same materials, then we will be able to avoid conducting it again. So the fourth step in content analysis is designing the study. This is determining the different procedures to be followed in the study. The instruments for collecting data must be determined. Needless to say, sampling must be done properly. The statistical treatment to be applied must also be decided upon. The method of data presentation must also be designed, be it textual, tabular, graphical, or all of the three. So, in designing the study, this is where we prepare the statistical treatment or the method of data presentation. So, the fifth is developing the instrument. So, this is for collecting data. In content analysis, is usually ang ginagamit is tally sheet or checklist. So, we must, in developing the instrument, we must prepare it. So, the instrument must contain all items or aspects to be studied. Next is collecting the data. To reiterate, content analysis is quantitative, and so tallies have to be made for each type of error committed. If there are 50 compositions to be studied, they are examined one by one, and the types of errors committed are tallied one by one in the tally sheet or checklist. When all the compositions have been examined and all the types of errors have been tallied, then the tallies for each type of error are counted to determine the frequency of each type of error. So, in collecting the data, for example, is tally ta. So, we count the frequency of this certain type of error. And we'll be able to know ang frequency niya, kung asa atong error ang mas daghan. So, the next step is analyzing the data. So, in analyzing the data, the types of errors may be ranked to determine what types of errors were committed for most. So, here in analyzing the data, diri ta mag-rank kung which among those errors ang pinakadaghan nga na commit sa students. Or frequency percents may be computed to determine the greatest portions or errors committed. So, pwede po ta mag-compute sa iyahang portions or percentage kung asa ato nga portion ang mas daghan og error. So, the next is making conclusions. So, in making conclusions, generally, conclusions are answers to the questions raised at the beginning of the investigation. So, katong question nga ato ang gihimo sa hypothesis, it will be answered diri sa conclusion. Besides, they are based upon the findings of the study. One conclusion that can be drawn from the above content analysis is the biggest types of errors committed by the first-year high school students in composition writing are the uses of the past and present participles instead of the past tense. So, moto siya to ang example gaina nga we use, ang problem nga ato ang gigamit is katong commission of errors sa writing sa first year high school students. So, diri sa making conclusions, diri nato makita ang results kung asa nga area sila mas daghan og namali. So, number 9, making recommendations. So, recommendations are made to solve or help solve the problems discovered in the study. So, in making recommendations, diri na ta maka-make og solutions or recommend how to solve the problem nga to ang gi-studyhan. So, besides, recommendations are also made for further research on the same study just finished. Mao ni siyang example. So, since nakita nato sa ato ang conclusion nga ang problem nila is katong sa past and present participles and the simple past tense. So, Since mao to ang problem, so we can recommend nga ang teacher, she or he should stress out ang difference sa past and present participles sa simple past tense. So that is all about my report.